There's a saying almost all of us grew up with: blood is thicker than water. Family first. No matter what happens, they're still your family. So if that's true, if that bond is the strongest one there is, then why are more and more people quietly walking away from their own families? Not just an argument, not a few weeks of silence. I mean disappearing completely. No birthdays, no holidays, no phone calls, just distance, chosen on purpose and held for years. And here's the part that surprises people most. It isn't only the obviously broken families this happens to. Some of these families look perfect from the outside, the smiling photos, the holiday gatherings. But behind the door, something quieter was happening for a very long time. Psychologists who study this find the same thing again and again. Cutting off family is almost never a sudden, impulsive act. It's the end of a long, hidden process. So in this video, let's try to understand what's actually happening in the mind of someone who makes that choice. Whether you've made it yourself and carry the guilt, or someone you love has pulled away and you're desperate to understand why, this might be the explanation you've been looking for. When someone finally leaves, the family is usually stunned. They say things like, "Everything was fine. We had one small disagreement and suddenly they were gone." From where they're standing, it looks senseless, an overreaction to something tiny. But think about a volcano for a moment. An eruption only looks sudden to the people standing at the base, taking photos, who never noticed the pressure building underground. The lava didn't appear overnight. It had been heating, building, and pressing against the rock for years. On the day it finally erupts, the trigger might be small, but the trigger was never the cause. Estrangement works almost exactly the same way. The break doesn't come from one big event, it comes from a slow erosion. Tiny wounds repeated so many times over so many years that one ordinary day, the ground simply gives way. To the family, it's one dish left in the sink. To the person leaving, it's the 10,000th time. So let's talk about those tiny wounds, because they're easy to miss, even for the person living through them. Psychologists sometimes describe these as small, repeated emotional injuries. They aren't dramatic. No single one would ever look like abuse if you described it out loud. That's exactly what makes them so hard to name. It's the comment dressed up as a joke. "Oh, you finally got a job. We were starting to think you'd live here forever." It's being told that what you clearly remember didn't happen, that you're too sensitive, that you're imagining things. It's the constant erasing of small boundaries. A parent who reorganizes your room without asking, who calls again and again, and treats one missed call as betrayal. One of these, on its own, is nothing. You'd shrug it off. But the mind doesn't experience them one at a time. It experiences them as a pattern repeated for 20 years, and a pattern like that slowly trains the nervous system. This is why the person's own body often understands before their mind does. Their stomach tightens when a certain name lights up their phone. They sit in the car outside the house for a few minutes, just gathering themselves before going in. They make themselves smaller, quieter, less honest, less themselves, because shrinking keeps the peace. When a nervous system lives in that low, constant tension for long enough, stepping away stops being an act of anger. It becomes something more like an instinct, the mind pulling back to protect whatever is left. Here's where the work of Carl Jung helps us. Jung described the persona, the social mask we all wear to fit into the world. In a healthy home, you get to take the mask off when you walk through the door. You get to just be yourself. But in some families, home is the one place the mask can never come off. The real you isn't quite welcome. Instead, you're handed a role, often before you are old enough to choose it. See if you recognize any of these four. Role 1. The golden child. This is the child who carries the family's pride, the top student, the success story, the one shown off to relatives. For outside, it looks wonderful, but the love often comes with a hidden condition. You're valued when you win, so they chase achievements they may not even want, terrified that if they stop performing, the love stops too. Role 2. The scapegoat. When a family has tension, it won't deal with honestly. It sometimes needs somewhere to put the blame. The scapegoat is often the one who's a little different, more sensitive, more questioning. Ironically, this is usually the person who sees the family's problems most clearly and is brave enough to name them. And naming them is exactly why they become the difficult one. Role 3. The invisible child. To survive a tense home, this child learns to disappear, make no noise, ask for nothing, take up no space. Safety means being unseen. As an adult, they often become fiercely independent, sometimes to the point of loneliness, quietly believing that their needs are a burden to everyone. Role 4. The parentified child. This happens when a parent leans on the child for emotional support the child was never meant to carry. Confide in adult fears, adult problems, adult loneliness. The child learns far too early that love means taking care of everyone else. They often grow up not even knowing what they themselves need. Whatever the role, the cost is the same, slowly losing touch with who you actually are. And the moment a person tries to put the script down and step out of the role, that's often when the system pushes back hardest. So for many, leaving isn't really about leaving the family. It's about resigning from a role that was quietly erasing them. But this raises a hard question. If it hurts that much, why do people stay for years, sometimes decades before they go? The answer isn't weakness. It's one of the most powerful patterns in human psychology. Difficult families are rarely difficult all the time. If they were cold every single day, leaving would be easy. The thing that traps people is inconsistency. The painful moments are mixed with sudden moments of warmth. A terrible argument one night and the next morning your favorite breakfast on the table like nothing happened. Criticism followed by an unexpected gift. Psychologists have a name for this pattern of unpredictable reward, and it's the same mechanism that makes a slot machine so hard to walk away from. You keep pulling the lever, even while you're losing, because maybe this time it pays out. The brain gets caught in a loop. Tension and stress when things are bad, then a small flood of relief when a crumb of warmth finally comes. So the person keeps trying. If I just achieve a little more, if I'm just a little better, then they'll finally see me the way I need to be seen. It's like lowering a bucket into a well again and again, desperate for a sip of approval and pulling it back up empty every time. Leaving usually only happens when that machine finally loses its grip, when the person realizes the well has no water in it and that lowering the bucket one more time is only hurting themselves. At this point, it's easy to fall into pure anger, but I want to offer a wider lens, not to excuse anything, but because it's the lens that actually helps people heal. Look at where many parents came from. Their own parents often lived through war, through poverty, through times when the only goal was survival. They were raised by people who had no words for feelings, where "I kept a roof over your head and food on the table" was the language of love, because it was the only language anyone had. Many of these parents are not cruel by design. They're passing down what was passed to them, carrying empty spaces inside that no one ever helped them fill. Without meaning to, they bleed onto the people who never hurt them. Now, let's be very clear, because this matters. Understanding is not the same as excusing. Emotional harm is still harm, whatever its history, and understanding where it came from does not mean you have to walk back into it. But understanding does something quietly powerful. It lets you take the word monster off of someone and see instead a wounded, limited human being. Someone who couldn't hand you warmth because they were cold themselves. And strangely, that's often where the resentment finally begins to loosen. Some people leave, not out of hatred, but out of a decision. This pattern is going to end with me. But walking away starts a second battle, and this one isn't with the family. It's inside the person themselves. There's a deep human instinct to belong to your family, and there's an equally deep instinct to protect yourself. When those two collide, almost everyone is left holding the same haunting question. Am I a cold person? Why can't I just forgive like everyone else seems to? Part of that comes from the world around us. The films, the ads, the cards that tell us family is always warm, always forgiving. But here's a harder truth. You can't use the rules of a healthy relationship and expect them to fix an unhealthy one on their own. And then comes the part almost no one warns you about. Psychologists call it ambiguous loss. When someone dies, there are rituals, a funeral, people who gather, a way to say goodbye. But when you step away from someone who is still alive, there's no ritual at all. They're still here. They still post photos. They still walk the old streets. But in your emotional world, something has ended. You end up grieving two things at once: the relationship as it was, and the hope of the relationship you always wished for. There will be hard days, a holiday, a card in a shop window that says, "Best Mum," a wave of guilt that grips your chest and whispers, maybe you overreacted. Maybe it wasn't that bad. If that guilt comes, try to understand what it actually is. A nervous system that lived in tension for years will find peace deeply unfamiliar at first, even wrong. But guilt doesn't prove you made the wrong choice. More often, it proves you still have compassion. You're grieving the family you deserved, not defending the pain that drove you away. So what comes after? When the critical voices finally go quiet, a person often starts to hear something they hadn't heard in a long time, their own. The part of them that was unseen or overburdened or forced into a role far too young. And the work from here is gentle. It's learning to speak to yourself the way someone should have spoken to you. When you make a mistake, it's okay, I can try again. When you're anxious, you're safe now. It's letting yourself do small things you were never allowed to. Rest without guilt. Take up space. Want things. And slowly from those pieces, many people build what's sometimes called a chosen family. Because family, it turns out, doesn't have to mean shared blood. It can be the partner who respects your limits, the friends who listen without judging, the people who value you, not out of duty, but because they genuinely see you. That's where the old cycle finally breaks. not in anger, but in the quiet decision to live differently and to spare the next generation the weight you carried. So in the end, cutting off contact isn't really an act of punishment. For most people, it's something closer to survival and a refusal to keep abandoning themselves. If you're the one who walked away, you didn't betray your family. You stopped betraying yourself. And if you're the one left behind, searching for an answer, sometimes distance is simply the only way a wounded person can heal. Wherever you are in this, know that you're not the only one who has stood here. And if these feelings run deep for you, please don't carry them entirely alone. Talking with a trusted person or a mental health professional can make a real difference. If this helped you understand something you've been struggling with, consider subscribing. We keep exploring the deeper layers of the mind together. And if you feel comfortable, share your thoughts below. Sometimes one person's honesty becomes the thing that helps a stranger feel less alone. Be gentle with yourself. You're allowed to heal,